The Dancer and the Dragon Speaker by Laurie Lucking. Narrated by Tawnya Rollingson. Chapter 1. Will someone fix my hair? My sister Rosalind's whisper made the candle on her vanity flicker. In a minute. I tied the wide pink ribbon around my youngest sister's waist into a bow at the back. All done, Pippa. She craned her neck and smiled as I patted her shoulder. Daniel says he doesn't like pink, but it's still my favorite color. With an effort, I kept my jaw unclenched. Don't worry about what Daniel thinks. You look lovely. But I do want him to think I'm pretty. Pippa swished her silk skirt with a flourish. He's the only one I ever get to dance with. Only for now. I shared an uneasy look with Rose in the mirror as I crossed the room to where she sat on a cushioned stool. Next year, you'll finally get to attend balls and parties here in Oneska. Then I'm sure you'll have dozens of dance partners. Not as many as Rose, I bet. At age 12, Pippa hated being left behind with a governess while the rest of us attended social events. She twirled, then sank onto the edge of her bed. Rose didn't bother to hide a self-satisfied smirk. Even I don't always fill my dance card. I stifled a huff. Universally acknowledged as the most beautiful of the 5 Oneskan princesses, a failure to fill her dance card only meant Rosalind was choosing to be coy. I pushed a jeweled pin into her hair to hold a braid in place. Callista, 3 years older than Rose, faced Pippa with a smile. We'd all have sore feet if we danced as much as Rose. Besides, with your long curls, blue eyes, and quick wit, you're sure to attract many suitors once you're old enough. She fastened a string of pearls around her neck and sat next to Pippa. The large hexagonal chamber we all shared had a bed, dresser, and vanity along every wall, except where orange flames danced in the granite fireplace. Assorted chairs, settees, and cushions circled the thick rug at the center. I glanced at my own reflection as I swept more of Rose's lustrous auburn curls atop her head. Straight, unremarkable hair, pale skin, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes creased with worry. No doubt the only reason any gentleman ever asked me to dance was due to my status as the crown princess. Ouch! Rose rubbed her head where I'd been inserting another pin. Careful with those. Sorry. Shaking my head in an attempt to focus my thoughts, I slowly slid the pin into her hair. Tonight, I needed to protect my sisters, not fret about my appearance. If only we didn't have to change into our night clothes and get redressed every time. Rose heaved a dramatic sigh. Callie gave a sympathetic nod. It would be much easier if we could at least get help from our maids. But that would make them suspicious, right? Pippa bounced on the edge of her bed. Exactly. Callie patted her knee, then glanced around. Jolene, did you still need help with... Joe! Pippa's scolding tone drowned out Callie's question. You aren't even dressed yet! Jolene, our second youngest sister, sank further into the cushions on her bed. Why do I have to go? There aren't even enough princes, and Pippa enjoys it more. Speaking of not making anyone suspicious, I gave Pippa a quelling look. We have to keep quiet in here. And Joe, we've been through this. Prince Leonnar has requested that all 5 of us be in attendance. You know we can't afford to anger him. Callie hurried across the room to Joe. We're all tired, dear one, but it's not so bad. Maybe they'll have some of those honey cakes you like so much. Putting an arm around her shoulders, Callie helped her slide off the bed. But why do we have to work so hard to look nice? We don't even like them. Joe crossed her arms over her chest with a glower only a 14-year-old could achieve. Rose snorted, and I covered a laugh of my own before turning around. We're still representatives of Oneska, even in places or situations we'd rather avoid. And you'd best hurry. We don't want our escorts to get restless. Rose shuddered, all traces of humor gone. I can finish my hair. Thank you, Emelia. I gave her a quick nod before joining Callie in pulling a dress over our reluctant sister's head. I paused at the top of the steep, twisting stairway, my choking gasps having little to do with the level of exertion. Breathe, Emelia. This hidden staircase, accessible only by climbing through a trap door on the ceiling of our bedchamber, exited to the roof of our tower. The narrow, cramped space had been designed as a secret escape by one of our ancestors to be used in case of assassins or revolt. What would he think of us now? I cringed as a stomp above made the stony structure tremble. Callie touched my shoulder. "Do you need me to go first tonight? You're always so brave for our sakes, but I know how those creatures affect you." "Thank you, but I'll be all right." I raised my hand to press flat against the hatch that would release us into the clutches of our worst enemies. "It's so dark." Jolene's voice trembled behind us. She hated these nighttime excursions even more than I did. With a nod and a fortifying breath, I pushed open the hatch and climbed through. The night air above was crisp with hints of early autumn. Competing with only a sliver of moonlight, the stars twinkled in a merry dance above, too many to be numbered. There's a vast universe out there, so much bigger than myself. Its maker is watching us even now. The comforting thought dissolved into mist when a giant head blew warm air across my face with a snort. Stifling a scream, I scrambled onto the rooftop and moved aside for Callie to get through. Callie helped Pippa, then Jolene ascend onto the flat tower roof. Even Pippa's usual chatter fell silent in the presence of these menacing beasts. Just as well, since no one could know we weren't asleep in our beds. Rosalind exited last, somehow maintaining the bearing of a queen as she swiped a cobweb from her skirt. Squaring my shoulders, I faced the monstrosities Prince Leonnar sent to threaten and escort us every time he desired our presence in his neighboring kingdom of Tsantar. 2 dragons currently alighted on the turret, their massive talons scraping against the dark stone. 3 more circled above, like giant birds of prey. The dragon that seemed to consider itself assigned to me stood to my right. With scales a deep indigo, wings extending from its back that curved like a pair of giant mainsails, and pointed horns like a regal gazelle, the creature could almost be viewed as majestic. If it were flying at a distance, perhaps, or as the subject of a painting. But with each jagged scale on full display, and Prince Leonnar's warnings crowding my mind, I couldn't mistake this creature for anything but what it was. A monster, coiled and ready to destroy everything I loved with its searing fire and slashing talons. The dragon swiveled its long neck to regard me with round, silver eyes. Wondering what was taking me so long, no doubt. Yet as it blinked, something almost like pity seemed to soften its intent gaze. I recoiled at the thought with a bitter internal laugh. These monsters had no pity for us, nor anyone in this kingdom they plagued. With a sniff, I scrambled up the dragon's rigid spines to perch on its back, ducking behind its wings. It was likely too dark for anyone to see my silhouette, but it wasn't worth the risk. Pippa had already climbed onto her red-scaled dragon, making space for Callie's dragon with golden-yellow scales. My dragon gave its wings a flap, and I clung tighter as we lifted from the turret. My stomach always seemed to remain behind on the palace roof, leaving me dizzy and nauseous. I squinted into the wind, kicked up by so many pairs of beating wings, to see Jolene, then Rosalind mount their own dragons. Then we were off, out over the palace city of Gryffindor, past the cliffs of Lake Loana, above a dense forest to the rocky coast of Tsantar. Tears stung my eyes as I buried my face against unrelenting scales. Would we never be free? Quoch auns! The harsh guttural call sent shivers down my spine as effectively as the cool, salt-tinged autumn wind whipping through my thin shawl. Before I could pause to think, my head raised from my dragon's neck to glance down at Irtuk Citadel. In the darkness, its tall, pointed spires resembled sharp, fierce mountain peaks. Light glowed from each porthole-shaped window like a forge lit from within, reflecting in glittering shards on the lapping ocean beyond. It seemed no one in the citadel bothered to sleep when Prince Leonnar threw one of his many parties. The Crown Prince himself stood on a large, semicircular balcony, his face lit with an eerie glow by the torch his servant held aloft. He presented a regal picture, his broad chest and shoulders encased in embroidered brocade of a deep blue, and his thick, dark blonde hair tied back with a leather strap. His sharp jawline and full lips would be almost handsome, if not for the prideful, careless glint that always shone in his gray eyes. He raised an arm. "Och, hei flansp!" I winced, my stomach lurching as my dragon changed its trajectory to descend toward Prince Leonnar's balcony. Turning my head in a jerky movement, I verified that each of my sister's mounts had done the same. My eyelids squeezed closed just as indigo scales alighted on the dark, silver-threaded charcoal stone unique to Tsantar. We came to a stop with a thump, its wings flexing a few times before folding at its sides. Suppressing a groan, I slid to the ground. I'd managed to keep my dinner lodged as a lump in my stomach, but I had no interest in sampling any of the delicacies that would be served at tonight's festivities. The balcony trembled as each of my sister's dragons landed with a clatter of talons. Shrouded in my dragon's shadow, I inhaled one deep breath. 2. Time to dance, Emelia. I nearly let a bitter laugh escape. To think I used to enjoy lilting around a ballroom floor in time with the music. But far beyond the physical activity, of which Prince Leonnar would require plenty, it was the mental dance that would leave me exhausted when he finally released us to endure another nauseating flight home in the hours just before dawn. The wordplay, the tightrope walk of defying Leonnar in whatever small ways I could, without angering him enough to command his dragons to raze our beloved Cavalia Palace to the ground. Or the entire country of Oneska, like they'd done to Philistra. A course of action he'd threatened often enough. With one last shuddering breath, I straightened my coral satin skirt and stepped away from my dragon. Jolene hovered nearby, cowering as peach scales huffed and snapped at an evening jay soaring above. I hurried to her, nearly tripping on her mount's light orange tail. We made it. The assurance was as much for myself as for my sister. She wrapped her arms around one of mine. I hate this place. I patted her hand. Me too. But we'll be strong for Oneska and for Father. It's just another night of dancing. There could be worse forms of captivity. Maybe. Her light brown brows furrowed above her dark eyes. Prison might be preferable if they let me keep my harp and crochet hooks. I'd request books instead, but I know what you mean. I snuggled against her for a moment before straightening. Come on, before someone hears us and decides to let us give the dungeons a try. If we must. Heaving a sigh, she walked at my side to where Pippa chatted with Prince Leonnar. Callie regarded her with fond amusement, and Rosalind fixed her wind-swept hair. "Princess Emelia, there you are. I was hoping you would join us this evening." Leonnar swept out a hand in welcome, as though he'd sent us an embossed invitation via royal messenger, rather than a set of fire-breathing dragons. I disentangled my arm from Jolene and stepped forward. "You know I couldn't miss one of your gatherings, Prince Leonnar." "Indeed." A warning shone beyond the glimmer of sardonic humor in his eyes. "Please do come in. I hate to neglect my guests, and my brothers await the company of your fair sisters. We wouldn't want you to get a chill in this cool night air." A sneezing princess makes a poor excuse for a dancing partner. Holding my shoulders erect, I stepped forward and took his offered arm. "My thoughts exactly." He glanced behind us as my sisters filed inside, Callie leading Jolene and Pippa chatting with Rose. While I'd rather be anywhere else, the absence of the nipping wind did make my shivering subside. I pulled my shawl tighter with my free hand. "Your parties seem to become more frequent all the time. What is tonight's occasion?" "Ah, I must have neglected to tell you. Tonight we celebrate Matvei's 17th birthday. He can hardly enjoy the occasion fully until lovely Rosalind is at his side." He kept his grip on my arm as we descended a winding staircase with gleaming silver handrails. I swallowed a snort. Leonnar never told us when we would be summoned next, no doubt to keep us in anxious suspense. Prince Matvey is one of many admirers Rosalind has gathered in recent years. I hope she considers my brother as a top candidate for her hand. He leveled a pointed look in my direction. After all, you've seen how much Tsantar has to offer as an ally. Access to our ports, exotic delicacies from the sea, a flight of dragons as allies rather than foes. He cleared his throat. It's no small consideration. Yes, that point had been driven home effectively. Every time he threatened destruction by dragon fire if we were to tell anyone about our forced trips to Tsantar. Each mention of Philistra, the island that had been decimated by Tsantarian dragons over a decade before, when they dared to stand up to their larger neighbor. In return for our timber and crops and iron reserves, as you've pointed out, the partnership wouldn't be without benefits. Benefits that couldn't begin to outweigh the drawbacks. But Rosalind is only 16, hardly old enough to give marriage any serious thought. She has plenty of time to make her choice. Well, you, perhaps, do not. His words lodged into my heart like a burr. At 21, the marriage queries and suggestions had become less and less subtle. But I'd yet to meet anyone I'd have any interest in spending my life with. And even if I had, how would Leonnar retaliate if I chose another with such finality? Not that the man even liked me, but he seemed determined to keep me, all of us, at his beck and call, to parade us around, as though Oneska and Tsantar had forged the closest of ties. Before I could formulate a response, music and laughter spilled from a bright room ahead. As we continued down the torch-lit hall, I tried to ignore the murals of dragons raining fire down upon thatched-roofed homes, or bearing armor-clad soldiers into war. Clearly, we weren't the first kingdom Tsantar had tyrannized with its dragon throng. Our steps slowed, the rustling of my sister's dancing slippers shuffling to a halt behind us. Prince Leonnar puffed out his chest, directing one last glare my way, before pasting on a smile and stepping through the doorframe. "My friends, look who came to join us this evening." A few indistinct calls of welcome greeted our entrance. Though I'd spent more hours in this ballroom than I cared to count, the first view always made me blink. Vibrant scarves of every color bedecked the walls, and chandeliers brimming with candles hung every few feet, lighting the space with an almost garish glow. The younger 3 Tsantarian princes strode forward, saluting my sisters with stiff bows. I attempted a smile of my own as I stepped further inside and scanned the room filled with elegantly clad nobility, all dancing, mingling, or heaping sweets onto silver-edged plates. Time for the dance to begin. Hi, I'm Tawnya Rollingson. Thanks for listening to the first chapter of Laurie Lucking's The Dancer and the Dragon Speaker. If you'd like to listen to the rest of the audiobook, you can find it on the Romantasy Vault on YouTube. Check the link below.